Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Heart and Soul Connected. Tonight I have special guest Nancy Jean from Nancy Jean's Garden. Thank you for coming, Nancy
Well,
Jean.
thank you so much, Aley, for inviting me.
Thank you. We got a little bit of interesting things. We got lots of different things to talk about tonight, but hopefully we'll get Nancy will share some of her exceptional grids that she's made. But we're going to talk first about stones, and then at the end, we'll also speak and tell you a little bit more about her game or her divination. Uh,
The
or,
garden. I'm the one who calls it a game, and mistakenly, it's a garden.
okay, it's a garden, yeah, but it is an oracle.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
it's a divination tool.
yeah, it's a divination tool, and it's very different, and that's what I really love about it. So that's great. So, first of all, I just wanted, I've been attached or, attracted to stones for a very long time. One of my first stones is this beautiful amethyst that I
Oh,
got.
boy.
It is a beautiful point, and it has gone with me many, many places. And, it just has really nice energy. I think I've had this one since the 90s, and also spent some time up on Mount Ida in Arkansas,
Mm-hmm.
doing some digging up there. But I just have this affinity, and of course I love all different kinds of colors. I love the blues and the pinks and the
Mm-hmm.
purples. And I think you must like purple as well because your hair is such a lovely shade.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about I guess just the power of crystals, the interesting crystals that you, uh,
Okay.
yeah.
Crystals are the ones you think of as crystals would be like this quartz point,
Hmm.
which, a clear quartz point,
Hmm.
or this is honey calcite. Calcite's a marvelous. It's a crystal, but I call it a stone. Calcite's like fluorite. It runs the gamut of all the colors. So if you're looking for a color to attune to your chakras, you can find a fluorite. Fluorites go from clear white to dark purple. They have greens, they have blues, they have yellows. And I have a real affinity for fluorites. And fluorites come as little octahedrons. They're made like little eight-sided cubes. Like you put two pyramids together. It's called an
Hmm.
octahedron. And that's their when they're in their most natural state, they'll just tumble out of the mountain in that shape. And I used to get when I table read, which had a long period of time where I read at table, which is where you're in a shop or in a place and people come up and get read on the table. That's why it's called a table reading. Uh, and I would, when people would finish being read, I would give them a little fluorite, a little tiny fluorite. And I said, this is to help you remember the reading, or this is a color you need, whatever it was. But I gave away. And so I was always giving away stones, but, and collecting them. And I have some this is one of the stones I've owned the longest. And this is a rainbow obsidian. I don't know if you can see the rainbows.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's gorgeous.
That's a rainbow obsidian. I've had that since the late 70s. And
Mm.
it's a grounding stone. People say, how can you tell, what a stone's good for? Touch it. I mean, they're meant to be touched. And these crystals like this, to me, they kind of point your energy up. I use a lot of quartz crystals in my grids to help people run the energy around in their board. This sort of a stone, this kind of a dark stone and smoky quartz, they'll
Mm.
ground you. So if you're
Yep.
feeling a little bit flighty, man, this baby will bring you right back to earth.
Hmm.
People say,
Great.
and then this is Bumblebee Jasper. Can you see it?
Great.
It's
Is
jasper.
it
It's been
is
carved
it
into it.
tumbled? Oh, it is tumbled. Okay.
Yeah, it's not tumbled. It's been actually tumbled and then carved.
Okay.
People do that a lot to jasper because jasper doesn't tend to put itself into interesting shapes. It doesn't have a lot of cute little points.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And this is apelite,
Hmm.
and it has the when I used to have this on my table, I had a little light that shone through it because you can't, there's no way, I've tried to show this on my camera before, but there's a stream of other minerals that are running up through that stone. So when this was formed in the mountain, and this is a natural point, you can tell by the way it's formed.
Mhm.
And natural points on natural points, you know,
Yeah.
you know, not a big
Yeah.
deal.
Yep.
And this is another quartz, and this quartz is really interesting. You see all the fractions in it, the little flecks.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Every time we've had a planetary shift in the last 4 years, more of those show up. And somebody told me this is an ancient stone left from Atlantis that's recording things that we're going to be able to read what's in that.
Right.
I
Wow.
don't know if that's true. But then another, this is purely a stone, and this is a stone that's a volcanic stone. It's called a chrysanthemum stone.
Wonderful.
And a chrysanthemum stone, that white stuff that's on it,
Uh-huh.
that goes all the way through the stone. As you slice through that stone, that's all through it. It's like a white mineral that flashed up through the black, and they both froze together in time. And one of the most often found ways this shows up is as looks like a chrysanthemum, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the other thing is they're called writing stones, and they look like someone's written hieroglyphs on them. But you can slice all the way through the stone, and that is in there.
Uh-huh.
And one time I got a hold of at my crystal store, they had gotten a whole bunch of those, and I bought like 7 or 8 of them, and I used those to sign on my crystal grids. I put the, I mean,
Okay.
the stuff made no sense, but common stones people seem to like. People like quartz, and this is rose quartz, but it's translucent. It's a very interesting rose quartz. A lot of rose quartz isn't translucent.
Right.
This is one of my favorite quartzes just for energy. That's fire quartz. You can see how it goes red. It's got a lot of iron in it, and it looks like it's on fire. Then you get to, this is tiny, but these tend to be, this is ice calcite. It looks like a piece of ice. It looks like it ought to be melting, you know?
Yeah.
It's that clear. That is the cousin to this guy. Remember I said honey calcite?
Yeah.
Ice calcite. I use a lot of ice calcite. I've used in these grids I'm going to show you some ice calcite, some green calcite, because in each case they emphasize what we want to have. Then we have blue lapis lazuli, and lapis is a stone of communication and thought, and it's one of the oldest stones where we can find people recording it. The Egyptians loved lapis. They used to grind it up and use it to make the kohl around their eyes and stuff.
Ooh. Yeah.
But then this is probably the oldest stone I have in my collection. Looks like a little funky looking black rock, right? Rock.
Uh-huh.
That's called Shungite. And Shungite comes from the valley of the Shunga River, and it was made by an asteroid that splashed into the earth about 2 billion years ago. And it created this incredible layer of minerals. And this thing is 99.9% carbon. And the carbon is shaped in buckyballs. You know, if you take a geodesic dome, buckyballs are like 2 geodesic domes put together. And then the other trace minerals that are in it, if you ground this up, it would have every mineral that's currently on the earth. Wow. So that's why they don't think it came in from outer space. They just think the impact was so great, and it just cooked the earth till it went to 99.9% carbon. So that's probably the oldest stone I have here. These stones I showed you, the rose quartz, the shungite, the lapis lazuli, the fire quartz, the world's best job of showing this stuff, the fire quartz, and the ice calcite. And then the one I didn't show you this is pink opal, and it's opal. It's an opal in that it has the molecular structure of an opal, but it's not the opal like they find in Australia. This is from India. Those 6 stones are going to a client, and she bought it, and she'll get it like this. I'll show you. And I make crystal grids. I also make crystal compasses. And it comes in a little stack like that. And I explained to her what each of the stones is for. She can set it up like a little tiny grid if she wants to. She can carry it. She can pick out the stones that mean the most to her. But this is a woman, I did a long reading on her, and what she really wants to do is heal and speak her own truth strongly. So all those stones are about healing, about loving yourself, but having the energy of the fire quartz and the lapis to communicate. So
Wonderful. Well, thank you for the overview of that. I remember that I was told that whatever stone is meant for you is the one that you're going to usually choose. And some people can actually put it in their left receiving hand and feel the
Mhm.
warmth coming right off of it.
You
And
can
that's
feel the energy just come right up through you. And I've actually, when we show the grids, I'll explain it. But we fire up grids. You use your own energy. Before I send these grids off, they'll all be saged and completely cleaned off. Any
mhm.
intention, anything that was going on around me, and trust me, there's enough stuff going around me. It's probably that it washes all that away, and then I pack it up and send it to the person who's receiving it with a letter explaining every stone, why it's there, and
Mhm.
how it relates to the card. There's a cards that I put out for people, and they pick a card, and that tells me what they need.
Right.
I think there's two that were just hysterical. I had a priest who wanted to raise money for a nonprofit, and he ended up picking sexuality as his card. He was an Episcopal priest, so I mean,
Okay.
but it ended up when he and I discussed that, he goes, "It's such an odd card to get," and I said, "But all that sort of creative, because sexuality is in the second chakra, and
Sure.
all that creativity and all that thinking and all that what you want to do, what you want to create, that makes perfect sense to me." And
Mhm.
then the other one is a person who has a lot to do with extraterrestrial research
Mm.
and reaching
Okay.
out into that realm. They
Yep.
pulled Earth,
Ah,
and
wow.
and
Oh,
then after I talked to them later, after they got in the grid, they go, "I needed the power of Earth to bring me back here to do
mhm.
things that I needed to focus on." I was just
Just
kind
too
of
far out. Yep. Too
not
far
too
out.
far out, just drifting a bit. Um, then and it, if you find a stone, I had a stone for the longest time. I have no idea where it went. That's the other thing I'll tell you is you'll have stones as long as they're supposed to be with you. If you
Right.
lose one, it's time for it to go away. And I
Right.
had a woman who called me once and she said, "I'm really, really upset." She kept breaking quartz crystals.
Mhm.
And quartz crystals have fractures in them. And if I said, "Are you dropping them from the second story? I mean, what is the deal?"
Yeah.
Ends up there'd been a lot of anger going on around her, and that
Okay.
energy was going in the stones, and they were going, you know.
Yep.
So I told her just to put part of the stone in one part of the house, part in the other, and then decide what you want to do with them. And she said she ended up giving them all away.
Okay. Wow.
But
I think I told you I had that experience with lepidolite
right,
where there's rubellite embedded in it usually, and I'm
hmm
wearing it, and then all the rubellite pops out of it and it fractures. And then
hmm
I finally find another one and I lose it. So you told me, and I believe this, that I'm just done with that particular stone. I don't
yeah, you
need the
don't need the energy of it.
yeah,
I mean, it's like
yep,
go on, find another stone. I had
yep,
talked to a woman today who, when I read for her, we pulled from a oracle deck I have that's about crystals,
uh-huh,
and she pulled rubies. So she went and she found a small ruby ring. She decided she really wanted. She never had a ruby before,
uh-huh,
and she wrote me and she said, "They told me that this ruby is treated this way. Does that ruin the energy?" And I'd never been approached with that question. And what it is rubies, emeralds, and sapphires, whether they're blue sapphires or yellow sapphires or whatever they are, they're formed in the vent of the volcano. The
hmm
diamonds are pushed up and they're carbon and they're crushed by the earth, and that's how they get to be clear. So diamonds are the hardest ones because they come through that kind of pressure things.
hmm
The rubies and emeralds and sapphires and things don't get that kind of crushing usually. So they're very porous stones. I always knew, I'd always read that they're real. I mean, not that you and I can look and see the pores, but they're
right.
kind of weak stones. Well, they found out that rubies have the exact same refraction characteristics as leaded glass.
Hmm.
So they can treat rubies with leaded glass and seal up those pores, and it makes it a better stone.
Sure. Wow.
So I went and looked at it, and I found some other people, and they said doing that kind of work with the stone would not change the energy of the stone. So she showed me today the ring. She had it on her finger.
Good.
She went ahead and got it.
Got it.
So there's a lot of. I also got a request today. Someone wanted to know if they'd read that diamonds and yellow sapphire should never be mixed. But she had
Okay.
an old diamond and yellow sapphire flower. She'd inherited it, and she loved
Uh-huh.
wearing it. But she said, I was so upset when I was looking up yellow sapphire trying to see about it. It said, never wear it with a diamond.
Wow.
I went on Google, and I can only find one place that said that.
Okay.
What I tend to feel is wear what you feel is right. If something
Correct. Yeah.
doesn't feel good to you, then don't wear it.
I'll wear it.
I'm
I
not
had that.
wild about turquoise,
Uh-huh.
and I just never, it's never appealed to me. I've put it in some of my grids because it belonged there, but I don't keep that around as a thing.
When my mother passed, I actually inherited her rings that she wore, her
Uh-huh.
engagement. And one day I wore it soon after she passed, and I had to take it off. I've never put it back on. I was a mess. I must have picked up all the energy that she had, and
Hmm.
she was a very nervous person, and I
Oh
was just,
God, yeah.
yeah, it was awful. And I'm sure if I could smudge it or leave it outside or something like that, it would
Hmm.
probably be
You
okay.
could leave
But
it outside and put it in good enough space; it'd probably be gone. You won't
it
have to.
probably, yeah, yeah, it just was so powerful, and it was amazing. That psychometry that came
Hmm.
along with it, and because I knew my mother's, at least it was my
Hmm.
mother, and it wasn't somebody else's energy from a long
Right.
time ago.
I
So,
used to work in a vintage store. I used to read cards there,
hmm.
and people would come in with loads of old family jewelry. They didn't know what it was, and they'd bring it in there, and they didn't know the difference between costume and not costume. I
Right.
really liked the woman who ran the shop. If you brought in a diamond, she'd say, "Oh, this is not a piece
Hmm.
of costume jewelry." She would get it appraised and get them the price it should be gotten.
Good. Yep.
But um, she she'd bring stuff to me, and she'd go. She would buy things. She has beautiful jewelry. She'd buy things for herself. Say, "I really like this," and I'd say, "Hand it to me." And I'd go and I'd take over and I'd get my dragon's blood sage out.
Uh-huh.
You know, I'm gonna clean this one up.
Uh-huh.
That'd work. And the other thing is, um, people say, "How do I cleanse my stones?" For the most part, unless you're sure of its Mohs factor, and that's MOHS, which is how hard it is,
Hmm.
don't put it in water. They're always
Right.
like, you put it in running water. Don't. If it's
Hmm.
selenite, you have just ruined a perfectly wonderful crystal because selenite just deteriorates in water. But so kind of know the stones you're getting, but don't be afraid of cleansing one. And if you think that a ring is something someone wore on the extremity of their body, they were moving their hand all around their heart in the middle part of their body. Yeah, it's going to pick up a lot of that person's energy.
Sure. Yeah, that energy that's there. So I want to go and move into the grids, but what I
Okay.
wanted to do was that you told me first that you went into a shop. I don't know how long ago it was, but and that you saw
Oh
these
yeah,
crystal grids. And
I've
so
been
tell us that
right.
story.
I've been reading cards since I was 12, which
Uh-huh.
was a long. I'm 72. It was a long time ago.
Okay.
So in 2018, first I dyed my hair purple, and on my 69th birthday, I just said, "That's it. I want to have purple hair, and I'm going to go get purple hair." And so I went and got my hair dyed purple on my 69th birthday, and then later that summer, I read that he's a very famous tarot creator, and he's part of Hay House. His name's Radley Valentine. He's a beautiful
Oh
guy.
yeah. Yeah, he
Go look
does.
him up. He's got wonderful stuff. And
Uh-huh.
he was going to be giving a lecture in Denver, and I'd had a friend who'd moved to Denver, and I hadn't had a chance to see her. So I called in and got a seat at Radley's lecture, one for her, one for me. Called her up, said, "We're going to a lecture next 2 weeks Sunday." And she goes, "We're both going?" I mean, this is pre-Zoom, guys. So,
Mhm.
and I said, "Yeah." And So I said, but I'm flying up. You have to give me a couch. You can't get in. And
Yeah.
so I went up and I visited her. I went to the Stanley Hotel, the haunted one that's outside of Denver, and I didn't get anything from there. And then we came back, and that Sunday we went to the thing, and I thought it was going to be like a lecture room or something. It wasn't. It was in a store called Silver Lotus. It's another promo we're not getting paid for. But they had, and I was waiting around to get into it, and they had those wooden crystal grid forms you can see that have all of the points, and
Yeah.
And I asked the guy who ran the store, I said, "What's it for?" And he said, "Oh, it's a crystal grid." I had never seen that. In all the years I hung around this stuff, I'd never seen it. And
Yeah.
I said, "They're kind of interesting." So he showed me kind of how they work it and what they sell it to do, and I was like, "That's lovely." I have to fly back to Dallas. I'm not taking a big chunk of wood with me. So we listened, and it ended up Bradley's thing was he was sort of introducing a new deck, and it was kind of his way to get out with people and see how they responded. So there were only like 20 people in the room. It was just marvelous.
Wow.
And he read every single person in the room,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just wonderful. And and then I talked to him about how much I liked his decks. He signed a box of his cards that I had gotten. And my friend and I went and spent the rest of the weekend going around all the woo-woo shops and seeing all the stuff. But when I got home, I could not get the grid out of my mind. I just could. So I got a book and said, okay, Judy Hall's reading about crystal grids. But when I read about them, they didn't make sense to me. So then I started studying the stones, the ones that most appealed to me, and then started growing my vocabulary out, which became an Excel spreadsheet that has over 1,000 different stones and minerals on it and their attributes. And,
Mm-hmm.
and I finally one day in February of 2017, I said, I'm going to make my own. I'm going to make my own grid and see what I get.
Yeah.
So I decided I wanted to be about prosperity. So I went through and picked out my prosperity stones. And then I went back to sacred geometry to see what struck balance. And I built my first grid. And it's actually here. I'll show it to you. I still have it. It's not tied down. It's on my table now, and I'm going to put the can. So if you get motion sickness, close your eyes, and I'll tell you when you can open it again. You can open them again. Okay.
All right.
This was the grid I made.
That's so gorgeous.
And
I love the pyramid in the middle.
And that's an addition this year. I change it once a year. I change the center stone once a year. But it's got citrine, which is an abundance stone. It's got kyanite, which connects energy. It's got pyrite, which is the power stone. It's got adventurine, which is green adventurine, which is a gambler stone. It's got a bit of jade, a little bit of carnelian, and I've added shungite this year because I got some shungite to put on it. Mm-hmm. And this is my wand that I used to activate it, and I put underneath it is a list of all my friends and family that I wanted to prosper. Mm-hmm. Put me back in the picture, okay, because I don't like talking to my hands.
Okay.
And I set it up, put all my friends on it, and the first thing that happened was it was for prosperity and abundance and just to have fun new things come in our lives, because that's what we all kind of work. So you remember back when that's what everybody wanted in 2017. Uh-huh. And my friend I'd visited in Denver, she lost her job shortly after I left there, and she needed a new one, and she'd been looking. And she said, "You got me on the list, right?" And I said, "Yeah." So I lit the grid up. The next morning I opened it up. I opened up my email, and there's an email from an astrologer who, if you write her and you're a new person that's never written her before, she keeps all those emails and she pulls one and gives them a reading. Uh-huh. So it was like all of a sudden a fun, abundant thing. My friend who was looking for work calls me a couple hours later, and she said, "Am I still on the grid?" I said, "Yeah, of course you're on the grid." She said, "Well, I just got 2 job offers." Yeah. She'd been looking for 2.5 months. So, and after that, there was just a whole stream of things that happened to the people around that grid. So I went, this stuff works. So once I started talking,
those intentions
were, right. Once I started talking to people about the grids, I had a whole lot of people. I got to put this back up on the fritz.
Okay. What I like about it is how the different stones work together
Mm-hmm.
to work on the
In harmony.
energy. Yeah.
Right. And
Mm-hmm.
and so what I did is I started talking about my grid, and people were like, could you make me one? So I started just making them for friends and for my friends that ran the vintage clothing store. She was opening a new location, and I built her a rather elaborate grid to protect it and to bring abundance in. That's what's kept her alive through COVID.
Mm.
Um, just a whole lot of things happened. Um, so once COVID hit, I kind of got locked down in the house, and then somebody said, "Well, you ought to show your grids and tell people you can make them." And so I did, and I did them for a couple of readers as a gift because I'd enjoyed the work they did so much, and they featured them. And then the rest is kind of history. My channel
Yeah,
came after, but I was there.
that's fabulous. So I commissioned uh, Nancy Jean to build a grid for my husband, who
Mhm.
is currently working on several things. And he met with her last week on Zoom and
Mhm.
pulled some cards. He had, wasn't it three? And usually you only have one that comes up,
Yeah,
right?
well, what happened is if you pull a chakra card, then I try to work that chakra color in, and I'll
Right.
explain what that happened for him. But
Uh-huh.
um, this was the grid. He pulled um, consciousness, and
Hmm.
this is the grid he got. And one of the chakras he pulled is purple, and then
It's
the other
just
one's blue.
gorgeous.
So, um, and this has, I'm not going to go into all of it because it's really his
Uh-huh.
story to tell. But
Right, right.
that I will. He'll start in the center, and I'll show him how to start in the center and go out and touch all the crystals and
Uh-huh.
unify their energy, and then it will be
Right.
his generator.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And another,
Mhm.
because now that's all smooth tumbled stones and some quartz points. This is a different kind of grid. I mean, it's not weirdly different, but these are not. These are rough stones, and the amazonite is tumbled. But this is called attraction, and that makes sense with where her life is going and what she needs to do. And it's just to show you that there's different styles of grids.
Upgrades. And they're all, are they all um tacked down with
Oh yeah,
glue? Oh, okay.
I have
Okay.
had I offer a DIY grid where I
Hmm.
will put the grid together. I'll take a really good picture of it and send it.
Uh-huh.
And the
Right.
puzzle is, and I had one young woman who wanted that, so I showed how her grid was assembled as part of a show. This is how you put a grid
Okay.
together.
Cool.
And then I sent her off all her bits and pieces, and she wrote me back and she said, I'm really upset I can't get this together. And I said, honey, you got a whole show about yours. If you can't follow it. And she said, oh my God, I forgot completely.
Uh-huh.
This is another one for a man and whose life's going through some changes, and it's called Time.
Isn't that beautiful? These are just absolutely gorgeous.
And
And
that's carnelian and
hmm.
sardonyx. The carnelian's the most inner one, and then the other ones that are sort of stripy are sardonyx, which is a kind of agate.
Yep.
And that one has the blue kyanite connecting crystals that connect. What happens is when you put those crystals in between it whirls the energy this way.
Whirls the energy. Yeah. Just beautiful. I think I like, you know, the way that you do it so intuitively
Mm-hmm.
and personally, and then you talk to the client about their needs and wants and desires and put all that manifestation in. That's just so it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
And this one's a little weirder. This
Okay.
is called intuition. And that's really what the card looks like. There's three
Okay.
centers. So what she'll do is she'll unify all those centers and then she'll build up from that power grid to fire it up. But
Uh-huh.
it's got some carnelian, it's got some alligator, crocodile jasper, it's got
Cool.
apatite, the
Uh-huh.
big blue stones. It's heavy. These stones and this one's kind of heavy, but
Uh-huh.
it'll hang on her wall.
Yeah.
And it'll, she, I think she'll like it. She said she was thinking it would be something like intuition. Now, this is one of the more unusual grids I've done recently because it's so monochromatic.
Ooh, I know. It's
And
lovely.
this is called transparency, which, in case you can't guess, from the transparent stones. But remember, I said I used a lot of ice calcite. That's ice
Uh-huh.
calcite. That's a blue opal, like the pink opal I showed you in the packet. I got some blue opals one day. These are all
Okay.
fluorites. All the things around the edge are fluorites. And then on the grid, these little tiny, they look like dots to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are fluorite octahedrons.
Wow.
And
That puts me in mind of a mandala, but also when we were kids, the spirograph. Did you ever
right.
have a spirograph? That was always fun to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So I love that. I love that they're so individual, that they're so, there's no cookie cutter
No,
grid that
there
gets
are
sent
some that
everywhere.
you'll recognize sort of the same shapes coming through, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really do. I sit down. When I read someone, I read. Um, I do a reading on them before I even meet you. When I know you're coming on, I lay out 3 cards and say, "This is what my energy feels is going on around you." Usually,
Hmm.
that's pretty accurate. And
Hmm.
then I have the notes from that reading, and then we talk about other things, and then I spread out the uh, sacred activation oracle cards. This is the one that transparency comes from. It's called relationships,
It's
and the
beautiful.
cards look like this. Someone pulled this today. It's called
Mm.
romantic love. I've built
Mm.
this before. It comes out looking like a flower opening up. It's really pretty.
Wow. It's gorgeous.
And then let's see if one of the other ones. And some of them can get kind of weird, like reflection. I mean, it's got
Yeah.
odd shapes, but there are ways I can find crystals that are not naturally in that shape. I do use some carved crystals sometimes. I do not carve them, may I say. One of those things I do. The crystals, the rock shop I work with sells to a lot of jewelry makers, so they have a lot of oddly shaped things there. And I always manage to find it's amazing. I'll go in there and I'll have gotten a configuration. I'll go, shh, I have no idea how the hell I'm going to make this one work. And it'll
Mhm.
just be sitting there when I need,
Yep. Yep.
just the pieces. So,
So,
so that's, so I went from having little crystals on my table
uh-huh.
to seeing the grid in Denver to building a grid and then finding out I really could build grids. Now, there are a lot of books on grid building. There are a
Yep.
lot of books on sacred geometry. Um, I kind of winged it. And I'll tell you, that's one of the things I tell people is use your instincts. If you read something in a book and you go, that don't make any sense to me,
Hmm.
then, you can give it a shot, follow their formula. And if it doesn't work, then say, okay, what do I want to see? When I lay these grids out, I lay them out in my infamous clear pie pan over the form I'm going to use that I'm mentally using to construct them. And then I take a picture of that. And then I gather it all up and put it in a bag and I let it sit for 2 days. And then I bring it back out and I lay it out again. 90% of the time, I go with what my first instinct was. Sometimes I'll pull it out and I go, huh? What?
uh,
Really? That's wrong.
it's always nice to be surprised once in a while, isn't
Oh, well, it's
it?
a different day, different time, different
Every
vibe.
day. Yep. So I wonder, does anyone have any questions for Nancy Jean before we move into her next creation? I can tell you that you are able to access her account, her YouTube channel at Nancy Jean's Garden. And on that, is there a link to where you can
Yes,
buy?
my
Okay.
website is called Crystal Directions with an
Okay.
S dot
Uh-huh.
com, and that'll take you to the store and to where you can see. There's also a slideshow of a bunch of my
Oh,
earlier uh, grids if you want to see more samples of what they can look like.
sure. Okay. Sounds good. I can't tell you how excited I am for him to get his grid, and I'll be jumping up for joy when it finally arrives. But that's great.
It's
So
about a week away.
let's talk now a little bit about the next project that you have just pretty much unleashed,
Yeah,
which is your garden, which is an
right.
oracle. And I know that you did talk about it on Andrea Lilac Lanton's channel. but I'd love everybody to be able to see it and to know that
Sure.
it is also available if people are
Right,
interested.
it is. And I will put it down for you.
Okay.
Okay. That's the dog. That's my daughter's, not this alone. It's called the Oracle Garden. This is how you get it. All of the stuff you see below here comes in this tube,
Okay.
along with it's not like instructions or directions, it's guidance. And I'll read you the first paragraph about the garden. It says, what we plant in the soil of contemplation, we shall reap in the harvest of action. That's from Meister Eckhart. And then the garden is a place. To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow. And what I think we're doing here is, kind of sums it up. Not all thoughts are true. By contemplating situations in the garden, it gives you a chance to review your awareness and to decide what to plant and what's a weed and what to get it out of there. Change your consciousness by reframing your thoughts. The querying technique for this garden should be posed as a situation question. In other words, this is not a he's the one kind of thing.
Okay.
There would be, and the situation I talk about on here is, what do I mean by a situation question? Well, historically, runic readings should not have been, should I buy a house? Right. The runic way of saying it was about my housing. And you leave the stones that are here to tell you. Now, what stones are here guiding you? You have fusite, which is body, and it's also called the fairy stone. It's a beautiful blue stone, and I chose it because it's very connected to the earth. Fairies, if you don't understand the elemental realms, fairies are much more tied to the earth than a lot of the other elementals are. So this is a fairy stone. That's body, mind, and I picked yellow calcite, and it's yellow-orange calcite. It's a really pretty stone. And then spirit, the ever-popular amethyst. Yeah. It's a real pretty, it's a little chunk of amethyst. So those are the body, mind, and spirit. And then the other two stones that help clarify the situation is clarification, and that's sodalite. And sodalite clears up and helps you communicate what you want to say. It's blue. It goes to the throat chakra. And then the values or the grounding you bring to it, and for that I have pyrite. That's fool's gold, guys. It's not a real piece of gold. Okay.
And these are all about the size of a dime, would you say?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're in my hand. I mean, and I don't have giant hands.
Right.
Then I have earth, wind, air, and fire centering on and that's quartz, serpentine, white agate, and angelite. And those kind of balance the energy back in the middle. Then I'll point out the things on the scarf. There's earth, fire, water, air. Then there's the words that I sent to Alma the day I said, this is what I want to say. And it says, go for it. Time, future, present, path forward, false, restate, past. And then around the outer side is the chakras. And it starts with the root. And then you can't see it. And I've actually, this is why you do prototypes. We're going to fix this, but it says security. Okay. Sacral says creativity. Solar plexus says power. Heart is love. Throat is truth. Third eye is insight. Crown is enlightenment. And then we have the tree of life, which is harmony. It's all the elements coming together. So the way, when I first got I knew what was on here, but I didn't know if it would work. So what I would do is I would cast a stone every day. And I call that a crux reading, where you just throw one stone. And I would just pick a stone. So I picked the grounding. So I'd say, okay, what do I need to ground me today? And it says, I need to seek my enlightenment. That when I'm working with something. And so, okay, how am I going to find this enlightenment that you're telling me I need? So then you go. And the clarity comes from truth, speaking my truth. The This is an interesting one for spirit. When it lands between the two, it's between the present and the future.
Ooh.
And that's the amethyst, which is saying this is where your spiritual thing. But what's most interesting is my mind is between fire and water. Fire is the south. It is the element of your ancestors, your past lives, and everything else. Water is going forward. So it's saying your mind needs to deal with things that are happening from your past. It also needs to integrate the new thoughts and new things that are coming into you. But right in the damn middle fell my body. So my body is being balanced by all four. That's what I'm going to have enlighten me, is if I can balance my body between fire, air, earth, and water. And earth is the energy that's moving into your life to go away. Water is the way forward. Okay. The air is our thoughts, and fire is, like I said, family things or your own basic foundations. These also can be in the tarot. This is pentacles, this is cups, this is wands, and this is swords. So, and so if you can relate, if that helps you relate to it. But that's how you do a reading. And then I know this because I've been screwing with it for a while, but all this is written on here. Like for the body, when it lands where it did, this says, and remember I said, what do I need to ground? And it said enlightenment. It says, if it lands in the air, it says ground your thoughts. If it lands in the fire, embody your past. If it comes from the east, physical changes are coming. And the water tells me, water will help me, and emotions will help me ground. So that's how you read it. And you just literally, you can take this and just read the little keywords off of it, and you will see the story. And I ever had any, I mean, like people go, okay, lady, you read cards all the time. You do this all the time. You know, I mean, to me, that's what they'd say. And what I did to test it out was I tested out with some people I have quite a lot of people I've read in Dallas since I've been doing this since I came here in 1968. So I called on a couple people that I'd read, and I said, would you come let me practice on you? Yeah. And one of the women who came Sunday to practice with me and see how it worked, she has had no interest. I've been reading her cards for 7 years. She's not one of those people who want to go out and buy a deck and do her own thing. But she did roll these stones for herself. And when we read what it came up with, and I won't invade her privacy, but she's going through recovering from a traumatic situation. And it totally said what she said she knows in her heart she needs to do. Wow. And she said, so she ordered one of these yesterday. Excellent. She said, I've never wanted to do what you do, but what she wants to do is set this up in her house on a little table and roll stuff once a day. And just
I think it seems like it's going to be a lot. It would be enjoyable and easy for somebody who is not a reader, but that can also access, like your friend can access that on their own. I love it.
When I started channeling this stuff in, I started saying, why do we, I mean, go on Etsy. Do we need another thing to be used as a divination tool? Really? And what it said is, this is the path for the new way to be intuitive. That so many intuitive things have been negative, or especially the black and the white, the yes and the no. What you're doing with this is you're planting the energy. You're looking at that element of your life. You're planting that energy in the garden. And if you see something that shows up and you're going, I don't want that, you know the potential's there, weed it. That makes you conscious of it. So when that thought shows up in your mental, when your own little mental scape you're giving yourself, and say, no, thank you for sharing, but leave, you know.
Yep. Yeah. Wow. So do you have to cast all of the stones, or is it like a card where you pull a card and you get your message for the day?
I channeled 4 ways to read on the grid. The first is the crux where you draw one stone for your day, cast it in the garden. If you want more edification, you put out the other stones. And the stone, we call them A, B, C, and D, and you can read them left to right. The first one is the goal. The second is the obstacle. So in this case, the goal was the heart and to balance the spiritual energy between the present and the future.
Uh-huh.
Then the middle stone was the obstacle, and that's how do you balance your whole body like that? How do you get all those four elements to be together?
Right.
And then I had the mind between the fire and the water, that's where I am right now. That's the hardest. That's one of the things to work on. But the furthest out stone is my next step, and it was to speak my own truth.
Okay. Yep.
So then that's one way to read. Then the second way to read is collective ideas, and that's cast all the stones at once. And I've done it where I've gathered them up. I've gathered them up in the scarf and dropped them and see where they go. That works.
Uh-huh.
And this, by the way, if you're wondering, this scarf is 16 by 16.
Okay. That's good to know.
So it's kind of, and you cast the gardens and read the stones by stones and see how you feel like they relate.
Right.
Whatever the situation you were talking about.
That's right.
Okay.
And then we talked about the fact that you can also add your own stones that you love and you want to add to this as well. Yeah.
And then there's the cheap way. I mean, there's the cheapest time-wise go. One and done. Choose one of the stones and just cast it and live with whatever it tells you.
That's right.
But it also means you can meditate on where it lands. And meditation, most people don't think meditation means being Om, being calm, being all stuff. Meditation really means to become familiar with.
Yep.
So you just think that thing over and over again till
you listen.
It comes and becomes familiar. And then the fourth way that I wrote on here is you do you. Mm-hmm. If you're moved to do some other kind of reading, throw in other stones, whatever you want to do, throw it in.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Absolutely. Yep.
And if you're wondering about what your favorite pet stone means, Google it. It's really easy to Google it and get a lot of information. There's some sites I really like. There's that one that comes to mind right now, and these people do not pay me anything. They don't even know I exist. Well, they know I exist because I'm on their email list. But it's called Crystal Vault.
Uh-huh.
They have a lot of it, and they have classes. They have a lot of other things, but they have really, as far as I could tell, looking around, they had the quickest, cleanest, easiest to understand information about the stones.
Yeah. Well, for me, I've had the Melody book now. Love is in the Earth, I think that is the name of it. And although there are other stones like Magic Merlinite, I don't know. There's some I haven't been able to find.
There's some stones. There's a guy who was a very famous. He wrote like a big fat Bible on stones. He'd go into South America and he'd find something that was really a quartz, and he named it something else.
Okay.
And he'd try to patent that name. Well, it ends up you can't patent natural materials.
Right.
So he didn't kind of get away with it, but it kind of caused a stir in the world of minerals because people were like, oh, I have to have this grade of this. And I tell you what, it's what now, if you have to, because your heart's telling you absolutely positively have to have that because your heart's telling you that, and it's not that you believe in the best new shiny thing.
Right. It's just your call to that specific. And I believe it was Andrea that said one of your most important things that she learned was it doesn't matter what size it is.
Oh yeah,
it works the same way.
Yeah,
yeah.
Size,
and I like that.
And size makes no difference. So if these little bits of Shungite, I gave away some Shungite. If I tell you what I'll do for your audience tonight, if they want to go over to crystaldirections.nancyjean@gmail.com and say they'd like a little piece of Shungite, I'll pull one of the people out of tonight's audience. And
that would be nice.
But I'll get back with them by email and get their address. But they need to put Shungite, and that's spelled SHUNGITE. I've got some shungite, and I would love to share it with people. It's a very calming, very
Uh-huh.
healing stone. Actually, they use shungite they have used it in the past. They've been studying filtering radiation through it. I mean, this is an incredible universal filter. So,
Right. So there's two other stones that I love. I have them somewhere, but mostly in jewelry. One of them is charoite. It's purple stone with black in it,
yes.
and Moldavite. And I had a piece of Moldavite that was probably this big
Oh,
in the
wow.
90s. It was huge. And I don't know what happened to it. It's with whoever it's supposed to be with. But now I went to order a piece and I thought, and it was like $12, and all I got was this teeny tiny, looked like
Well,
a fingernail.
Moldavite was created the Czech-German border, and it was a
Yeah,
meteorite that hit, and
right.
it's by the Molda River. That's how it got its name, Moldavite.
Ah, okay.
And it is this. It's olivine, and one of the things I did a show with Andrea, and I've done my own show on stones from outer space,
Uh-huh.
and olivine or peridot, what we call peridot, and
Hmm.
actually they find it inside meteorites. I mean,
Wow.
it was one of the
Okay.
first minerals made in the Big Bang. But
Uh-huh.
and Moldavite looks a lot like peridot in that it's olive green.
It is.
And there's a lot. If you're going to buy peridot from someone, make sure it's a reputable dealer, because there's a lot of people. It's light. It's glass that was made by heat hitting the earth,
Right.
so it's hard to tell it from glass. But
That's right.
if you're a
Yeah.
geologist, you can tell because it won't have the characteristics of the soil that's there. And it is a finite resource. I mean, I don't think they've reached the end of it yet, but there's not Moldavite
No,
for.
there isn't very much. And I know that some people who are very sensitive have felt almost like lightheaded holding on to it because it is so strong
Hmm.
coming from outer space. But it does look like almost like a piece of glass. The one I
Hmm.
had was just gorgeous. I wish I hadn't lost it. But the other thing I got was a thing called I believe it was called a record keeper. And it was this huge crystal um, chunk they found somewhere in Australia, and they made it
Hmm.
into small pieces. And I remember in the 90s getting it, and that is very energetic, but it's just a piece of quartz crystal, but it comes from this
Big giant thing. Well,
giant
in
thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Australia's had a lot for some reason. I don't know what's wrong with that country, but it gets a lot of meteorite hits, and it
Yeah.
got a lot of asteroid hits. And you can tell I got someone just sent me, after we did the show on things from outer space, someone sent me the cutest little medallion, and it's got meteorite in it. And I know it has meteorite in it because meteorites are very heavy. They're
Yeah.
very dense, and they're also attract magnets, which natural
Oh.
natural metals on this planet don't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
there used to be a show on, and I think you can find it on YouTube. It's called Meteorite Men, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a British guy and an American that went all over the world looking for meteorites, and they used to have a thing that were, is this a meteorite or a meteor wrong? And they they would show slices of the meteors so you could see the different stuff it was made from. And I actually met the Englishman. He came to Dallas
Oh.
to a gallery show where they were selling meteorites.
Yeah, that's nice.
And it was
Wow.
fascinating.
It was. I bet it was. That's great. Well, we've sure covered a lot of different things here tonight, and I want to encourage anybody who has any questions to ask them, and we have a few minutes here. Otherwise, I encourage you all to go over to Nancy Jean's garden.
Garden. We're
Yeah.
gonna this weekend. I'm gonna, if you go to my garden and look at my community page, I'm gonna post. There's gonna be some times I've never done a live. I mean, I've done lives other people were running, but I'm a chicken and I never ran my own live.
It's not so
So
bad.
yeah, it's not so bad. But I'm gonna run a live show, and I'm gonna have
Perfect.
the camera looking at me. I'm going to have the cloth set up with the second camera so people can see it. And
Yep.
I'm going to be accepting questions. People want answered
Oh,
to
good.
see how the board works and to answer
Yep.
questions, kind of like where it came from, more information about that sort of stuff, because
Good.
it's, um, and this is true. And the day came when the risk to remain a bud was more painful than to blossom. And that's where we are.
Yep, we are.
It's time for us to. I enjoy reading people. I've been doing it since I was 12. I have nothing against all the traditional ways people read people. You want a tarot reading, I can do it. You want a past life reading, I can do it. But I really have always hoped that when I worked with someone, it empowered them to go on and be the best that they could be. And I feel like that's in part why I was given the message to transfer this and bring it here.
I love it. I do. And you followed your message, and
they don't let you sleep. I'm going to warn you guys, if you ever get the angels start coming telling you to do stuff, they won't let you sleep.
I know Susan Lynn has had that problem. She said they don't leave her alone.
The most fun one for me was in December. I had this woman write me and she said, I'd like a mentor. So I thought, I'll go meet her. So I set up a Zoom meeting and I met her, and she's just a charming woman, lovely. She had a degree in geology, but she was fascinated. She'd always loved rocks, but she had a sense coming off me that I could teach her the other way to love rocks.
Oh, I see.
And so I talked to her and I went, I'm really crappy as a mentor. I'm not good about keeping meetings. I'm really awful. And I said, keep watching my channel. I'll try to bring the things you want to hear. And, you're just lovely and charming. And I hope you like Florida because you're staying there. And, and I went to bed that night thinking, well, I've done a good job today. The angels literally used my head for a soccer ball. They're like, how dare you not help that woman? Whenever anyone reached out to you, they gave you help. That's how you learned. What's wrong with you? I mean, it was like they were really going, what's wrong with you? And I woke up. I said, okay. 3 a.m. I said, okay. I will write this lady an email and we'll give it a shot. She's my graphics designer. She's the one that takes all my things and makes them pretty. If I had gone with my first instinct, which was, oh ho hum, just another. She's absolutely marvelous. She's incredibly skilled and talented. And I send her a list of words and she comes back with this garden. I mean, the angels whoever was putting us together. And she told me that the same night that I went to bed thinking, that's okay. She stormed around her bedroom saying, but I want a mentor. I want someone to work on this. I mean, she said she's never been so angry in her life. And I said, well, your little angels came and got me, honey.
They did. Boy, she pushed them out, didn't she? You get over to her house and tell her what for, right?
To move. You go halfway across America and kick this woman in the head.
Oh, my God. That's
great. This is
great.
I have a whole series of go with the flow stories from the day I dyed my hair purple to seeing the grids to building grids. All of it lays together in a stream. And I've been told by someone who talks to the masters for me, I understand they're there. And I understand there are a lot of people that want to ascend and go talk to them. Tell you the truth, I could care less. They asked that one of the people who communicates to him, they said, why did she come back? She's been through so many. I have the oldest soul record that one of the Akashic people had ever seen. And she said, wow. Man, you go back to the beginning. And I said, I didn't know that. I mean, when the people used to talk about Atlantis and Lemurian stuff, it was like, whoop. And I guess went over my head because I didn't need to know it. But I said to him, why? He went to them and he said, why is she here? I mean, she should be with you doing your stuff and directing people on here. And they said, her soul loves humans. It's like addicted to them. It's like her. So she has to be with humans, and she's always loving being with humans. So we gave her an assignment that would really help them. It took them 71 years to get the assignment here, but.
But you were there.
I'm here.
Like Susan said, you found your co-creator. That's awesome. Well, thank you so very much for coming on my show and explaining all these wonderful things. And I'm going to look forward to when you do your show that, on your own. And I know you'll do fine. We'll all be there to watch. Yeah.
I'll be doing them throughout the weekend to give people times a chance.
Yep. Well, thank you so much.
Well,
thank you. And thank you to everybody that came by. Thank you. You have a great Memorial Day weekend. Bye now.
Bye.